The steel bulk of the guided missile destroyer USS Higgins DDG-76 sliced through the tropical water 12 nautical miles west of Scarborough Shoal. The time was 0746, local on August 13, 2025. On the AN-SPY-1D radar, the PLA Navy Type 052D destroyer Guilin 164 closed aggressively, pushing its speed to 28 knots. The Guilin was here bruised and overly aggressive after a recent clumsy collision. But the most shocking technical detail was the violent bioluminescent explosion of amber warning lights flashing on the Higgins' electronic warfare console. The Guilin's Type 346A AESA radar was screaming, not with a warning, but with an overwhelming electromagnetic blast as it desperately illuminated the area. This was not a professional challenge. It was a desperate tactical overreaction signaling deteriorating command and control. The Higgins was about to punish this stupid technical mistake with the full weight of the American intelligence machine. The stakes in the South China Sea had never been higher, nor the geopolitical risk more palpable. The target of the USS Higgins' transit was not merely the Scarborough Shoal, a collection of rocks and coral. The target was the entire global supply chain that enables the American lifestyle and the foundation of international law that sustains it. China, through its sweeping and unlawful prior notification or authorization requirement for innocent passage, was attempting to unilaterally redefine 15% of the world's commercial sea lanes. This confrontation was the pivot point. The Higgins was executing a textbook freedom of navigation operation, a mission that transcended a simple naval patrol. It was a physical, professional repudiation of Beijing's illegal demands. The collision 2 days prior, a high-value PLA Navy destroyer recklessly smashing into its own Coast Guard ship, had exposed a critical vulnerability. The Chinese military, under pressure from Beijing to perform aggressive expulsion actions, was now accepting operational risks that bordered on the absurd, a clear sign of deteriorating command and control. The Higgins was not just sailing. It was forcing the adversary to show its hand, daring them to escalate, all while the world's most sophisticated intelligence apparatus watched and recorded every mistake. This was more than a patrol. It was a definitive test of the credibility of the entire American alliance network, the stability of world trade, and the fundamental principle that the sea belongs to all, not just to the largest local power. You simply cannot afford to miss what happened next. The adversary in question, the PLA Navy's Type 052D destroyer Guilin, is informally known in Chinese media as the Chinese Aegis. It is a formidable vessel displacing 7,500 tons, armed with a 64-cell Universal Vertical Launch System (VLS), capable of firing the supersonic YJ-18 anti-ship cruise missile and the HHQ-9 long-range surface-to-air missile. Its pride is the Type 346A AESA radar, a four-panel fixed-array system designed to mimic the U.S. Navy's legendary SPI series. The psychological profile of the Guilin's crew, and indeed the entire PLA Southern Theater Command, was rooted in a fatal miscalculation and profound arrogance. They believed they were engaging a solitary warship, a single 505-foot vessel that could be outmaneuvered, shouted down, or forced to blink first. But this thinking was based on an outdated analog picture of modern warfare. Their core miscalculation was failing to grasp the concept of systems decoding. The Guilin was not facing the Higgins alone. It was engaging the entire interconnected network of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. Every tactical detail they planned, from their Type 052D's 130mm main gun elevation to the precise frequency of their Type 346A radar, was being shared in real time with an invisible distant network of American reconnaissance assets, turning the Guilin's aggression into a live fire training exercise for the U.S. The severity of the threat was not their hardware, but their intention to violate international law. Yet their defeat was inevitable because their arrogance had led them to confront an enemy that could see into their command structure and exploit the very systems they were relying on for tactical superiority. The American counter-preparation was a masterclass in technological and doctrinal superiority. The USS Higgins of Flight 2, Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, carried the venerable AN-SPY-1D multifunction PISA radar, while the Chinese Type 346A was a modern AESA, the Higgins True power resided in the Aegis combat system, a fire control and threat management capability often compared in its processing power to the computational totality of the entire Apollo program. This capacity allowed the Higgins to operate with Cooperative Engagement Capability (CEC), meaning it wasn't just seeing targets through its own radar. It was simultaneously seeing through the eyes of an E-2D Hawkeye 300 miles away, or receiving real-time targeting data from a distant P-8A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft. The vessel carried 90 cells in its Mk-41 vertical launch system, a mix dominated by the legendary RM-66M Standard Missile 2 SM-2 and the RM-162 Evolved Sea Sparrow Missile ESSM, the latter capable of 50 G-turns in the terminal phase due to its unique thrust vectoring system, a little-known technical detail that makes it lethal against high G maneuvers. But the crucial tool for this non-kinetic engagement was the AN/SLQ-32V Sidekick Electronic Warfare EW suite. This system didn't just passively listen to the enemy, it possessed the capability to aggressively jam, spoof, and even target the adversary's radar. The preparation was simple. Every system was set to AAW Auto-Air Warfare Automatic, ready to launch the most sophisticated defensive weapons ever created, but the real strategy was to collect. The Higgins was a multi-million-dollar sensor platform preparing to execute a perfect kill chain analysis, not with a missile, but with a pulse of electromagnetic dominance. The climax arrived in a sequence of accelerating tension and contrasting professionalism. At 0801, local the Guilin completed its acceleration and began a hard turn to starboard, directly cutting across the Higgins's bow. A dangerous, aggressive maneuver intended to force the American ship to alter course or risk a catastrophic collision. The exact reckless move that had caused the Guilin's own recent damage. 5 seconds later, on the Guilin's bridge, the officer of the deck, Senior Lieutenant Wei Chen, squinted, seeing the American destroyer appear immense and unwavering through the morning haze. The bridge was a chaos of hurried, shouted orders in Mandarin, pushing the ship past its safe maneuvering limits. The crew's nerves were frayed, a direct consequence of the higher operational risk, signaled by the presence of a naval destroyer in what should have been a purely Coast Guard affair. On the other side, inside the Higgins's Combat Information Center, the atmosphere was one of professional calm. Lieutenant Commander Vance, the TAO, a model of American discipline, watched the vector lines converge.
"All contacts steady as she goes. Hold course, Captain,"
Vance reported, his voice a steady monotone despite the converging radar returns. His hand hovered over the fire inhibit switch, but his eyes were on the EW console. The decisive blow would be non-kinetic. Then a pre-programmed sequence was executed. The Higgins's AN/SLQ-32V Sidekick EW suite, operating with full passive knowledge of the Guilin's Type 346A radar frequency and power level, thanks to weeks of previous surveillance, executed a surgical electronic lock. It didn't jam the radar with brute force, which could be easily masked. Instead, it delivered a precise, overwhelming pulse of deceptive jamming, momentarily saturating the Guilin's combat system with thousands of ghost targets, false high-velocity missile tracks appearing from all domains. For 5 eternal seconds, the future of the Indo-Pacific hung in the balance. The PLA destroyer's sophisticated AESA system suddenly violently dissolved into a snowstorm of digital interference. Indeed, after 20 seconds, Guilin's main radar screen went from a clear picture to an unusable flashing morass. Senior Lieutenant Chen, deprived of his primary sensor, could not verify the distance or speed of the American destroyer, now rapidly closing. He instinctively screamed the emergency order into the microphone,
"Rudder hard a port, break away."
The Guilin, already moving at high speed, violently broke off its intercept, executing a wide, uncontrolled swerve that would have been a collision had the Higgins not been positioned perfectly for the enemy's inevitable panic. The aggressive maneuver had failed. The USS Higgins never altered its course or speed by an inch, maintaining its full 8,400-ton bulk on the legally protected line of innocent passage. The PLA Navy had expelled itself. The aftermath was a silent, profound strategic win for the United States. The Guilin, its aggressive tactical display completely defeated by an invisible wave of electromagnetic energy, retreated to a position outside the 12 nautical mile limit, having been forced to commit to a maneuver that exposed its own lack of control. The USS Higgins proceeded with its scheduled operations. The FONOP successfully completed the right of innocent passage, legally reaffirmed. There was no kinetic exchange, no missile launched yet. The victory was absolute. The key outcome was the immense intelligence coup achieved. The Guilin's panicked high-speed evasive action, combined with its full-power radar emissions, exposed critical high-fidelity data. The Higgins's ANSLQ-32 had recorded the exact performance parameters of the Type 346A AESA under extreme stress, logging its susceptibility to deceptive jamming at that specific frequency, power level, and pulse repetition rate. This intelligence goldmine was instantly packaged, encrypted, and uploaded via Link 16 to the entire US and Allied network. The PLA Navy, in trying to save face by claiming an expulsion, had instead exposed the secret vulnerabilities of its flagship destroyer class. The price of the action, a few $100s in electromagnetic power, purchased tactical data worth billions. The victory was a silent celebration of the perfect coordination discipline and seamless integration of the U.S. Navy personnel and their technological systems. The core takeaway from this confrontation near Scarborough Shoal synthesizes all the lessons into a chilling deterrent strategic message for potential adversaries. Today's lesson. In modern warfare, the speed of information sharing is more important than the speed of a bullet. The PLA Navy's mistake was twofold: first, choosing a reckless, physically demanding maneuver over professional compliance, and second, believing that the fight was about the size of their gun when it was actually about the superiority of the opposing data network. The Guilin brought a formidable ship to the fight. The Higgins brought the entire American system. The consequence of China's attempted aggression was the self-inflicted wound of an intelligence loss that will plague their fleet for a decade. Every future U.S. missile, every EW system, every tactical algorithm will now carry the ghost of the Guilin's failure program to exploit the exact vulnerabilities exposed during that 5-second electronic blitz. This is the silent promise of the U.S. Navy. Every act of reckless provocation will be met not with an escalation, but with a collection of intelligence that hastens your eventual defeat. It is a chilling warning. The oceans are watching, and the rules of the game have been defined. The question that remains, forcing the PLA to reflect on its strategic future, is this: how many more times will you expose your billion-dollar warship to intelligence gathering before you learn that the true cost of a challenge is not the fuel you burn, but the secrets you willingly give away?